We acknowledge the traditional owners of this country, Jara, the Jajawurung people who have lived on these traditional lands and cared for Jendak, the country, over many thousands of years. We acknowledge their living culture and unique role in the life of this region. We give respect to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples viewing this presentation are advised that it may contain images, voices, artworks, and stories of people who have passed away. All care is taken to ensure cultural respect. However, if something appears on this video that causes distress, please let us know.
Tobacco smoking, introduced by the British colonisers in 1788, was never part of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture. However, since 2020, it has become one of the leading contributors to burden and disease in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities. This is especially concerning among Aboriginal youth, who are more than 3 times as likely to smoke compared to non-Indigenous Australians. According to the Department of Health and Aged Care, tobacco smoke can harm nearly all 78 organs in the body. When inhaled, thousands of harmful chemicals enter the lungs and are transferred into the bloodstream, circulating through the whole body. Tobacco smoke contains carcinogenic chemicals such as formaldehyde, commonly used to preserve dead bodies, and benzene, a chemical used in petrol and paint thinners. Tobacco also includes highly toxic substances such as furan, used for insecticides, and carbon monoxide, a poisonous gas found in car exhausts. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander youth, those aged between 12 and 24 years old, are especially vulnerable to the harms of smoking. The ongoing effects of colonisation and the resulting intergenerational trauma have contributed to this cycle of disadvantage, continuing to impact the social and emotional well-being of the community today. This trauma, passed down through generations, can manifest in many forms. Stress and anxiety, a common emotional response, can lead young people to engage in this harmful coping mechanism. Having limited access to culturally safe healthcare and education is another factor. This is due to the lack of trust in healthcare settings due to systemic racism and discrimination.
Smoking remains one of the most critical health issues impacting Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander youth. According to the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare, 41% of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples aged 15 and over smoke, compared to 14% of non-Indigenous Australians. Smoking is the leading cause of preventable deaths among the population, causing 37% of all First Nations deaths. It can lead to cancer, heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and other non-communicable diseases that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples are already at a high risk for. The prevalence of smoking also impacts families and communities as a whole, as well as a significant reduction in the life expectancy compared to non-Indigenous Australians. As smoking habits typically manifest in adolescence, intervention at this time is crucial. This can be linked with exposure to smoking at an early age, smoking as a coping mechanism, as well as the gap in culturally safe education and health services. This leads to lifelong addiction and thus adverse health outcomes. While smoking rates are decreasing overall, these figures still remain high, particularly in regional areas. Smoking rates for Indigenous Australians aged 15 and over in major cities was 29% on average, compared to an average of 58% in very remote areas, displaying a significant gap in health behaviours. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander youth in regional areas have fewer support services, lack of access to healthcare, and barriers of quitting, including underlying social disadvantage and uptake of services to support quitting. Solutions to combat this problem include community-based approaches, such as programs run by Aboriginal community-controlled health organisations like the Bendigo District Aboriginal Cooperative, through anti-smoking campaigns and overall support in a culturally safe environment.
Culturally safe approaches are essential in addressing smoking among Indigenous youth across Victoria. especially Indigenous-based organisations like Deadly Choices, as these organisations are more effective than non-Indigenous-based services because they embed Indigenous values, promote connection and trust, and empower young individuals through culturally appropriate messaging. Deadly Choices was established by the Institute for Urban Indigenous Health with a focus to improve lifestyles through partnerships, community events, and school events. Their Smoke-Free Futures and junior tobacco education programs promote culturally accurate education with Indigenous role models that encourage discussions about identity, health, and smoking. These programs acknowledge cultural normalities that can improve healthy long-term change and improve behavioural patterns. In contrast, non-Indigenous-led organisations often do not prioritise cultural awareness and the partnerships needed to be effective. Consequently, organisations that do not directly address communities and their needs reflect as being patronising, causing mistrust and disengagement from communities. As Indigenous peoples have historically endured uttermost discrimination and mistreatment in conventional systems, it is essential that they have trust in organisations that they engage in. Other culturally safe efforts that support anti-smoking promotions include the incorporation of Aboriginal liaison officers in health organisations and services. These officers offer advocacy for Indigenous patients, such as describing their medical information in culturally appropriate approaches and promoting holistic care. Their presence can make patients feel at ease and close the gap between Western health systems and Indigenous viewpoints, ensuring young people feel seen and respected.
The reason that programs such as Deadly Choices are the most impactful is because they are Aboriginal self-determined programs, meaning they are founded and led only by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Cooperatives such as the Bendigo and District Cooperative, also known as BDAC, puts Aboriginal health in Aboriginal hands. By incorporating programs such as Deadly Choices, they are able to directly target the ongoing issue of smoking in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander youths. The Deadly Choices program is more effective towards reducing smoking amongst Indigenous Australians compared to Western programs because it caters specifically to the needs of Indigenous youths. The Bendigo and District Cooperative provide a culturally safe space led by peoples who have a direct perspective of how generational trauma from the stolen generations takes a toll on the mental health of Indigenous youth, and therefore can implement more influential strategies that are able to empower young Indigenous Australians to make the correct lifestyle choices. In Aboriginal slang, the term deadly is used to describe something that is good or amazing. Using the word deadly for this program is to encourage Indigenous Australians to make good choices. The use of Aboriginal slang is a way to connect to the Indigenous community through language, a space that fosters and encourages Indigenous culture and kinship will be a safer and more comfortable place for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples to reflect on their own choices and make more educated and informed decisions about their own health. Aboriginal-led initiatives use a holistic approach to health and well-being. Well-being for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples extends further than a lack of disease, illness, or injury. Alternatively, it recognises how social, emotional, spiritual, cultural, and physical well-being are all connected. Instead of using a fear of disease due to smoking like many anti-smoking campaigns, the BDAC and Deadly Choices choose to empower young Indigenous Australians to take back their self-determination and encourage them to make the correct and healthiest choices to improve their overall health and well-being and quality of life.
In conclusion, community organisations and involvement that are Indigenous focused are seen to be as more effective as they prioritise culturally safe environments. Programs like Deadly Choices and the use of liaison officers empower individuals, improves health literacy and creates trust, essential for reducing smoking and improving health outcomes with Indigenous communities.